عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Welcome to the second session of the special sessions that we're having in Ramadan. If you guys weren't here last week, basically what we're accomplishing here is that every Sunday we have a short session about hour and a half. We probably won't go hour and a half. We'll be done by 3 o'clock inshallah. So we have a couple of ayat that we try to explain and try to gain some reflections out of that. Last week we went through the last passage of Surah Al-Furqan, the Surah 25. And this week inshallah we'll be looking at the dialogue between Musa alayhi salam and Khidr alayhi salam that comes in Surah Al-Kahf. And before I dive into that conversation or that dialogue that we have in the Quran, I'd like to look at Surah Kahf holistically. Okay, because we know that Surah Kahf is full of blessings. It's a surah that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the Muslims should recite every Friday, right? Abu Darda, he reported that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that if anyone memorizes and learns the first 10 ayat of Surah Al-Kahf, it is as though that person who will be saved from the fitna or the trial and tribulations from the Dajjal. So it's a great surah. It has a lot of virtues and blessings, you know. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the person who recites this on the Friday, right, on Yawm al-Jum'ah, he will have a light that will be emanating from him, a shining light that will be emanating from him until the next Friday. Right? In another hadith, it says that this light will be so bright and so radiant that it will reach all the way to Makkah. Subhanallah. And so much so that another hadith of Bara ibn Azib, you know, once he was reciting the surah, right, in the early hours, in the Qiyam al-Layl prayer, he was reciting the surah in his house, and he saw that he had a horse next to him, and it started getting agitated. The horse started getting agitated, and so much so that whenever he was reciting the surah, that there would be a light that would be coming from the skies, and from this light, right, the horse would be getting agitated. So, and he noticed that every time he's reciting Surah Al-Kahf, this is happening. So he went to the Prophet ﷺ and he told the Prophet ﷺ of this. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Nuzilat as-sakina, right? This was this was tranquility. And in Ibn Hajar, he says that this sakina, it refers to the angels. You know, salamun ala, the sakina, it refers to the angels. That the angels were descending because he was reciting Surah Al-Kahf. So there's clearly something about Surah Al-Kahf that is very, very virtuous. There's full of virtues, full of blessings. And we see, and before we get into these selected ayat that I want to get into today, one of the things that we need to see just from the thematic approach of Surah Al-Kahf, we see, you know, most of us read this surah every Friday. And perhaps we've also read the translation of the surah. And we see that there are many stories that Allah Azza wa Jal, He narrates in Surah Al-Kahf, right? And to be exact, there's 4 main stories. In the surah that Allah Azza wa Jal, He narrates, there are 4 main stories that are narrated. And does anyone know what these 4 stories are in order? Huh? What's the first story? Yeah, Ashab al-Kahf, that's the first story. Okay, what's the second one? Story of the 2 gardeners, right? The 2 gardeners. What about the third one? Musa and Khidr. Okay, that's the third one. And Zulkarnain is the fourth one. So there are 4 stories. And you know, when we read a translation, for example, you know, or even when we might even read some type of tafsir, sometimes we don't understand that there's a connection between these 4 stories. There's a beautiful connection between these 4 stories. And basically, each of these 4 stories talks about a specific type of trial or tribulation. Okay? Each of these 4 stories, they all have, the underlying theme is that they all talk about a fitna, all talk about a trial or tribulation. What is the first story? It was Ashab al-Kahf, right? What was the trial or tribulation? Huh? What was the tribulation that these Ashab al-Kahf faced? So do you guys know the story? It was basically these innahum fityatun amanu bi rabbihim, right? These were a group of young people, and they believed in their master. They believed in Allah, right? But the person who was in charge, or the king of that time, right? He was persecuting anyone who believed in Allah. He was killing, he was slaughtering anyone who was believing in Allah. So these group of young men, they fled from the city, and then they sought refuge in this cave, right? So there was a fitna of religion of that, right? So the first one is a fitna of religion. Then the second story we see is the story of the two gardeners. Okay, do you guys know what the fitna over there was? The fitna of wealth. The fitna of wealth, right? It was the fitna of wealth. Because one of the person who had the two gardens, right, the wealth got to him. He thought he was big and bad. He got very arrogant. And because of this, we know what happened to him. It led him to destruction. And the third story that we're going to talk about today.
What is the word you are using for fitna of arrogance? What did the word you use?
Wealth.
Fitna of wealth.
Oh, okay. I
Fitna of
could
wealth.
decipher that. Thank you.
And the third one is Musa and Khidr. Okay? And that is fitna of knowledge. Even knowledge can get to you, right? Unless you are humble. And if you are humble, right, you can overcome that. And because of being humble and having knowledge, it raises you even higher. And we see that example in Musa alayhi salam. And we'll go deeper into that. And the fourth one is the fitna of what? Dhul Qarnayn. The fitna of power, right? Dhul Qarnayn, he ruled the east and the west. He had all the power. But he was able to recognize, who is the Malik al-Mulk, right? Who has the ultimate power. He was able to recognize that, and he was able to be grateful for that. And because of that, that power served him even more, and because of that, he got even closer to Allah. So that those are the underlying themes of all of these stories. And we see that, and there's no question why the Prophet ﷺ, he said that if you read these ayat, you are saved from what fitna? The ultimate fitna of Dajjal, right? Because Dajjal, and towards the end, hopefully if we have time, I'll show you guys a PowerPoint of how each of these fitna, right? Of how each of these fitnas, that Dajjal will also have these fitnas. And if you're able to recognize in the surah, and if you read it on every Friday on a regular basis, you'll be able to overcome that once that comes. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he says that you'll be safe from it, the person who reads it the way it was recited, the Prophet ﷺ said, right? So not just like reciting it like a body does without understanding. It comes with understanding. And when you're able to understand that, when Dajjal comes in, Dajjal, we know it will be the ultimate fitna, right? Or trial or tribulation. And a person will be able to overcome that when that comes. So with that brief introduction, inshallah, we'll go into our ayat. And these ayat, they start from ayah 60. Ayah 60 of Surah Al-Kahf. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ, he told us that once upon a time, Musa ﷺ, he was addressing his people. He was giving them a khutbah. Musa ﷺ was giving them a khutbah. And a person from the congregation who gets up, he asks Musa ﷺ a question. He asks him, does anyone know the question? He asks him, who is the most knowledgeable amongst mankind? Who is the most knowledgeable human being? And Musa alayhi salam, you have to realize, Musa alayhi salam, he has direct conversation with Allah. وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. He's talking to Allah Azza wa Jal directly, okay? And he's getting revelation from Allah Azza wa Jal. So he answers and he says, oh, I am, right? Not in an arrogant manner, but to him, he thought that he was the most knowledgeable of people. But Allah Azza wa Jal, right away, he sends Jibreel alayhi salam to reprimand Musa alayhi salam. And he says, what you said it without having knowledge. You didn't know if there's someone that is more knowledgeable than you. Okay? And now you have to look at the response of Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam doesn't respond to him and say, well, وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. You gave me the tablets in my hands. Who can be more knowledgeable than me? I'm teaching the people. I'm the prophet. I'm among the ulul azm, right? He's not like Iblis. Iblis turned back and what do you say? Rabbi aghwaytani bima, right? He blamed Allah Azza wa Jalla. He said, oh, you tricked me, or you wanted me to go astray. But Musa alayhi salam, you see that the different responses, the satanic response of Iblis, how he turns back and he says, no, yeah, the arrogance, right? But you see the humbleness, right? The humility of Musa alayhi salam. When he knows, when Jibreel comes and he reprimands him, right away, what was his answer? He says, Ya Allah, who is this person? Show me this person so I can go learn from him. Subhanallah, this is the Prophet of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Shows you the humility and the humbleness that you and me are supposed to have, right? If a Prophet of Allah Azza wa Jalla, one who Allah is speaking to directly, one who Allah Azza wa Jalla hands him, right, the tablets, right? A person of this caliber has such type of humility. So Musa alayhi salam thus becomes the first person in the history of mankind to travel for knowledge. So when you and me, when we travel for knowledge, a lot of you guys might be from a little bit further away. I know some sisters come from Kenosha, right? They're following the footsteps of who? Of Musa alayhi salam. He's the first one to travel for knowledge. So he travels for knowledge. And then we see, and when we get into these ayat, we see that he was told, Musa alayhi salam was told that he should take a cooked fish with him, right? And he'll be accompanied by Yusha ibn Nun. And they will go, and the sign that was given was that when this fish leaves, right, his lunchbox, for example, when he leaves his lunchbox, then that is the place where he will meet this person. Okay. Now, who will Musa alayhi salam meet? The Quran just tells us وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. This personality, the Quran doesn't say it's Khidr, right? That we know from the Hadith. The Quran says وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا, which means that Allah Azza wa Jalla says Allah gave him, especially from Himself, very specific and beautiful knowledge. Okay, so Allah gave this person specific knowledge, and it's very sad, but there's been a lot of legend, right, and fantasy created around this mystical feature, right, of Khidr, right? But the Quran and Sunnah is very, very clear, right? Khidr is not someone who flies around with a green turban and comes to special people and gives it, comes in their dreams and meets them, and it's not like that. Okay, Khidr, from one of the most strongest opinions is that he was a prophet, right? And he had some knowledge that Musa alayhi salam didn't have, and Musa alayhi salam had some knowledge that he didn't have. Okay, and we'll see the proofs of him being a prophet once we get into the ayat, inshallah. And again, just some conversation around Khidr, that where did he get this name from? Do you guys know what Khidr means? Khidr or Khadr. What does Khadr mean in Arabic? Green, right? It can be pronounced Khidr, Khadr, or Khudr. Either one of those three. It means green. And it is said that he was so blessed that wherever he used to go, everything around him would turn green. Everything around him would bear fruits, and there would be vegetation around him. It was because of his blessing. And from this, the name stuck to him, and he was called Khidr. Okay? So, now we'll begin from ayah 160. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذ قال موسى لفتاه لا أبرح حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقبا. And remember when Musa said, right? The fi'l is qala, the fa'il is Musa. Okay? And remember when Musa said لفتاه, to this young man, لا أبرح حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين. I'm not going to give up this mission. لا أبرح, I'm not going to give it up. حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين, until I reach the merging of the two seas. Okay, أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقوبا. Right, over numerous years. Hukub, it's lots and lots of years. Some scholars say it's 80 years. The least could be 80 years. And hukub, that's hukub. And hukub is a plural. So plural of 80 years. So it's just a lifetime. So he's like, I'm never going to give up this mission until I find this person. And the scholars talk about the persistence that he had to seek this knowledge. You and me, we want to seek knowledge. Right? We'll go to this weekend seminar, but if something comes in the way, we're like, I'm busy, I can't do it. But look at Musa alayhi salam. He said, I'm never going to give up this mission until I die. That's what it literally means. Amdiya huquba, it's a phrase until I die. I'm going to find this person, I'm going to get this knowledge from him. Amdiya huquba. And another beautiful thing is, the contrast between the two relationships, right? There's a relationship between Musa alayhi salam, who's the teacher, right? And Yusha ibn Nun, who is the the student, right? And we'll see this change, the dynamics change, right? Musa alayhi salam becomes a student, right? And وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا, or Khidr, he becomes a teacher. And we see those dynamic and those contrasts as well. Okay. فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَجْمَعَ بَيْنِهِمَا نَسِيَا حُوتَهُمَا فَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ سَرَبًا. So when they both, Yusha ibn Nun and Musa alayhi salam, when they both reach the union between the two bodies of water, نَسِيَا حُوتَهُمَا, they forgot their fish. فَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ سَرَبًا. And this fish, right, miraculously, that was a cooked fish, it came out and went into the ocean and it kind of started swimming away into this canal, into this tunnel. Okay? فَلَمَّا جَاوَزَ قَالَ لِفَتَاهُ. And when they crossed it, قَالَ لِفَتَاهُ, Musa alayhi salam, he said to Yusha, آتِنَا غَدَاءَنَا, bring us our lunch, right? لَقَدْ لَقِينَا مِنْ سَفَرِنَا هَذَا نَصَبًا, right? This journey of ours has really gotten us fatigued, right? هَذَا نَصَبًا, we've been very fatigued, we're tired, right? We're hungry now. And subhanAllah, even the scholars, they say over here that this hunger that was created was because they had already passed the point that they had to be, right? So this was also a blessing from Allah Azza wa Jalla, that there was a sign that they had traveled too far. قَالَ أَرَأَيْتَ إِذْ أَوَيْنَا إِلَى الصَّخْرَةِ فَإِنِّي نَسِيتُ الْحُوتِ, right? So Yusha, he replies and he says, did you see when we came closer to the rock, Sakhra, a boulder, a big rock, when we came close to that, and he says, فَإِنِّي نَسِيتُ الْحُوتِ, I forgot the fish, right? وَمَا أَنْسَانِيهُ إِلَّا شَيْطَانُ أَنْ أَذْكُرَ, right? And subhanAllah, he blamed shaitan. So, and it tells you like he's a young man, a young boy, right? He's scared. So he blamed shaitan. He said, it's only shaitan that made me forget to remind you, right? Because this was when Musa alayhi salam, he took a break, right? And he might have probably fell asleep on the rock, and then the fish came out and it started swimming away. And he saw that, Yusha ibn Nun, he saw that. But he says that, I forgot. He's a little boy, he forgot. وَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ عَجَبًا. And he was like, it was amazing. Ajab, it was ajib. It was so strange. This fish, it got out. And he started, and subhanAllah, you would think, something so strange happened. How could he forget? He's a little boy, he forgot. فَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ عَجَبًا. قَالَ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنَّا نَبْغِي. So Musa alayhi salam, he replies, and he was like, that was what we were waiting for. That was it. That was the point that we had to be. That was the sign that we would meet Khidr at that point, at the merging of the two seas. So he says, فَارْتَدَّ عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمَا قَصَصًا. Then they turned around, retracing their footsteps, right? In Arabic we say, how you say story? How do you say story? Qissa. Because when we narrate a story, it's as though you're retracing the footsteps, right? So that's where qissa comes from. So he says, عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمَا قِصَصًا. So athar are footsteps. So as though they're retracing their footsteps to go find that place where they were before. Is it cold in here or is it just me? I'm really cold. Okay. فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا.
You have to have more fat.
فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِنْ عِنْدِنَا وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. So then they found a slave from one of our slaves. فَوَجَدَا. Arabic students. What type of word is that? فَوَجَدَا. Madi, right? And what's the embedded pronoun? Huwa or huma? Huma, both of them. Yusha and, right? Huwa, wajada. Huma, wajada, right? So both of them. فَوَجَدَا. Both of them found. Who did they find? Right? What's the maf'ul? Maf'ul bihi over here. Abdan. It's right? It's nasab. So فَوَجَدَا عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. And for those who don't understand that, right? That's for these little Arabic students here that have been, they've been taking this course, and a lot of you guys already know it's a yearly course that we've been doing, right? Inshallah. So I need to test them. And if they don't know it, I need to kind of embarrass them in front of others. Don't feel bad. So فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِنْ عِنْدِنَا وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. So when they retraced their footsteps and they went back, so Allah Azza wa Jalla says both of them they found an abd, a slave, min ibadina, from our slaves, right? And you guys remember ibad? Difference between ibad and abid from last week?
Special banda.
Special slave, right? So he's a special slave. فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِنْ عِنْدِنَا. Right? And how is he special? آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِنْ عِنْدِنَا. That we gave him, especially rahmatan, right? A mercy min indina, from especially from us, right? He had mercy especially from Allah Azza wa Jalla. وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. And we taught him, عَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا, right? Specifically and specially from us. And it's beautiful. The rahmah is indina, right? But the ilm, there's two things that Allah Azza wa Jalla says that He blessed him with, right? He blessed him with mercy, but He says from indina, from us, right? But when it comes to the ilm, عَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا, right? Min ladunna, it's more special than just indina. So it tells us that he had more knowledge than mercy. Subhanallah. Okay? وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. And we gave him, especially from us, we taught him a lot of knowledge. And why am I saying a lot of knowledge? You guys remember Arabic students, maf'ul mutlaq, right? Ilm, allamnahu, and then ilma. It's the maf'ul mutlaq. The masdar is the same as the fi'l. Okay? وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. So indina is used in the first section when it's talking about rahmah, and ladunna is used in the second section when it's talking about ilm. So in other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him more knowledge, right, than mercy. So the emphasis is on knowledge. And we'll see how that plays into this entire story. It's beautiful. And again, these little tidbits, these are all show you the miraculousness of the Arabic language and how, how subhanAllah, Allah precisely uses words in specific places and how in the context, that word is perfect in that very context, words used. Okay? So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He goes on, He says, قَالَ لَهُ مُوسَى هَلْ أَتَّبِعُكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُعَلِّمَنِي مِمَّا عُلِّمْتَ رُشْدًا. So Musa alayhi salam, when he meets Khidr, right, he says, can I follow you around, right? Can I tag along, right? Can I shadow you, right? Based on the hope that you will teach me from what you have been taught of righteousness. مِمَّا عُلِّمْتَ رُشْدًا, of guidance, right? Rushd is rightly guided, right? So can I follow you around so that I may learn from the guidance and from what you have been taught from Allah Azza wa Jalla. Okay, and again, now you see the transition, right? He was just a teacher, right? But he finds no, subhanAllah, no arrogance at all. He finds it perfectly fine to go from the teacher role to a student role in a split second, subhanAllah. There's the beautiful transition, right? There's no arrogance, completely humble. He humbles himself a great degree. So, قَالَ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. Now look at the etiquette of the teacher as well. Right? He's the teacher, right? Who Khidr alayhi salam. And how does he respond? He's like, إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. You're not gonna be able to have patience of what happens now. If you want to follow me, you're not gonna have patience, right? وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ. And he goes on and he says, وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. And how can someone, right? And he doesn't single him out. He's like, how can someone have sabr? وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. Have sabr and patience on something that he's never experienced before. What you're going to witness now, therefore, right, in quotations, is going to be something that you've never witnessed before, never experienced before. This is going to be a completely new experience for you. And how can you have patience over it? When you see things that don't make sense to you, I'm not blaming you. He's like, I'm not blaming you. You're not gonna be able to have patience. And then Musa alayhi salam, okay. Musa alayhi salam, he replies. He says, Satajiduni. Soon you will find me. Sa, right? The scene is for what? Future. It comes before what type of word? Fi'l mudari. Good. So Satajiduni, right? The ni is what? Me, but maf'ul bihi, right? You will find me. Insha'Allah. If Allah wills, you will find me sabiran. Okay, sabiran. You guys can translate that. Patient. He's like, if Allah wills, you will find me patient. And then he says, وَلَا أَعْصِي لَكَ أَمْرًا. Okay, and I won't disobey your command. Okay, and it's beautiful. The first part, there are two parts. This one ayah, there's two parts. The first part is that, Insha'Allah, you will find me patient. But he doesn't say, Insha'Allah, I won't disobey your command. It's beautiful how the scholars, they even break that up. Because, partly he does disobey, and we'll see that. So he doesn't say Insha'Allah in this part. But in the first part he says Insha'Allah, and he is patient. Okay? So, قَالَ سَتَجِدُنِي إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ صَابِرًا وَلَا أَعْصِي لَكَ أَمْرًا. قَالَ فَإِنِ اتَّبَعْتَنِي. He goes like, okay, if that's the case, right, you really want to follow me, you really want to shadow me, right, there's going to be some conditions. Right? There's going to be some conditions. And now he says, قَالَ فَإِنِ اتَّبَعْتَنِي. If you follow me, فَلَا تَسْأَلْنِي عَنْ شَيْءٍ. Don't you ask me about anything. You're not allowed to ask any questions. Nothing. Okay? It's going to be a new experience. You already know. وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. I know you're going to want to ask a lot of questions. But the condition is, you're not going to ask me anything. حَتَّى أُحْدِثَ لَكَ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. Until I make clear to you what's happening. Until I give you some insight on what's going on. But until I give you directions and I give you some statements, until that point you can't ask any questions. You can't ask any questions. So that was that was the condition. فَانْطَلَقَا. Okay. Now the story starts. That was a primer of what happened. Okay. Now this is the meat of the matter. Okay. فَانْطَلَقَا. So they both set out. They went on this journey of theirs. Okay. حَتَّى إِذَا رَكِبَا فِي السَّفِينَةِ. Until both of them, they boarded a ship. Okay, until they boarded onto a ship. Now it is said that, Musa alayhi salam and Khidr, they wanted to get from one end to the other side of the water, right? And they didn't have any means. So these fishermen, they had a ship, and they offered to give them a ride or a lift onto the other side without taking any ajr, without taking any reward, okay, or payment or compensation. So they boarded the ship. فَانْطَلَقَا حَتَّى إِذَا رَكِبَا فِي السَّفِينَةِ. And once they board the ship, and you have to understand these people, these fishermen, this is their risk. This is how they earn their risk, their provision, right? This is their work. Okay, they go out, they fish, and then that's how they support their families. And you have to see that these people, they're being very charitable to Musa alayhi salam and Khidr. They're offering him that, okay, we'll take you to the other side, we won't even charge you. Because they don't have money, we won't even charge you, we'll take you to the other side. So they board the ship, they get onto the ship, خَرَقَهَا, right? What happens while these people are fishing, right? Khidr, he seeks to the bottom of on the lower deck, he goes, and he takes his axe and خَرَقَهَا, right? He makes a huge hack, right? He rips the plank of the wood. Then Musa alayhi salam, whoa, what happened? These people are doing us a favor and you're going to do something like this? And he replies, he goes, قَالَ أَخَرَقْتَهَا لِتُغْرِقَ أَهْلَهَا. Right? Did you just, rip a hack through the ship? لِتُغْرِقَ أَهْلَهَا, so that you can drown these people? لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا إِمْرًا. Right? And لَقَدْ, we know that it's two words, it's two letters, right? Lam and laqad. Right? These are two forms of emphasis. Not just one emphasis, it's two emphasis. Right? And laqad comes before what type of word? Just look. Past tense. It comes before past tense, right? So a lot of emphasis here. لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا إِمْرًا. You've done something great. How could he have done something like this? Right? You've done imra is like you've done something illogical, unethical. Right? How could he have done this? These people helped us. Right? They're going to give us a free lift, right? A free ride, and you're going to do something like this. How could he have done it? Right? But did he go against one of the conditions? Right? He did. Okay. So again, Khidr alayhi salam, he replies to him. He says, قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. Didn't I just tell you? قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ. Didn't I just tell you? إِنَّكَ, that you لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ, that you won't have any, you won't be capable مَعِيَ صَبْرًا, to have any type of patience. Didn't I just tell you that? So Musa alayhi salam, he replies. He says, قَالَ لَا تُؤَاخِذْنِي. Do not hold me accountable. بِمَا نَسِيتُ, of that which I forgot. He's like, it was an honest mistake. I forgot. And you have to understand that Musa alayhi salam, you have to understand his personality. It's very hard for him to see anything that's wrong. Right? You remember the story when he was kicked out of Egypt, right? When he was traveling and he goes and then he sees two girls, right, trying to feed their sheep, but they're standing far away. And then all of these guys, they're hogging up the well. And he goes to them and he's like, what's the matter with you? مَا خَطْبُكُمَا? Right? What's wrong with you? Why are you just standing here? Either feed them or go back, right? What's wrong with you? Because he can't see an injustice. He can't see something wrong. It's a part of his nature, right? And the story of the person who called out and he thought that he was being oppressed. He comes and he just pushes him, right? And he's so strong he accidentally kills him. But he just is like, what's wrong with you, man? Right? And this guy dies. He passes away. But you see his personality. That's very hard for him to see any injustice, to see something wrong. He wants to fix it, right? He's a hands-on person. He wants to fix it. So he sees something like this. It's very hard for him to just stand back. He knows he just took the condition. I'm not going to ask you a question. But his personality is very hasty. He needs to know, right? In a good way. He needs to know. So he says, قَالَ لَا تُؤَاخِذْنِي بِمَا نَسِيتُ. He's like, don't hold me accountable for what I forgot. It was an honest mistake. Give me a chance, right? بِمَا نَسِيتُ وَلَا تُلْحِقْنِي مِنْ أَمْرِي عُسْرًا. And do not impose on me in my decision more difficulty. Don't impose more difficulty because of the decision that I made. It was an honest mistake. Let it go. Let's move on. And again, you see the parallel, right? Who had messed up before? The student. Who was the student who had messed up before? Yusha, right? But what was the response of Yusha? He blamed it on who? Shaitan. But you see, Musa alayhi salam, he doesn't blame it on Shaitan. He's a little bit more mature. He's a little bit older. He's like, I messed up. I forgot. Right? He takes that blame. So they go on. فَانْطَلَقَا. So they go on. Right? حَتَّى إِذَا لَقِيَ غُلَامًا. Until لَقِيَا. This is huma. Right? فِعْلْ ماضي. So until both of them met غُلَامًا. A young boy. So what happens is that they get to the other side, right? And or they come back actually, because the ship is about to drown. So they're coming back. They get onto the shore, and there's some kids playing around on the seashore. Okay, some kids are playing around. So kids play around. What happens? They meet this one little boy, right? And some of the narrations say he's anywhere from 7 to 10 years old. حتى إذا لقي غلاما فقتله. He does the most unimaginable thing you can think of. What does Khidr do? He murders his kid. He slaughters his kid. Subhanallah. Right? Can you imagine seeing this? Right? He is the Prophet of Allah. Right? Musa alayhi salam, he's the Prophet of Allah. And at this point, he knows that he just said that I will not ask you anymore. He knows that. Right? He knows that he forgot the first time. But at this, when he sees innocent, child being slaughtered and murdered, he says, قَالَ أَقَتَلْتَ نَفْسًا زَكِيَّةً بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ. He's like, are you going to kill an innocent child? بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ. Right? SubhanAllah, how can you do that? Right? Innocent child, how can you kill an innocent child? Right? So, زَكِيَّةً بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا نُكْرًا. You've done something that is unknown. Right? Nukra, it's the opposite of ma'rifah, right? Known and unknown, common and proper, right? You guys remember? The fourth property of this? Yes? Okay. So something, what does that mean? Nukra, something unknown. What that means is throughout all mankind, all types of civilizations and societies, murder is something known to be bad, right? You don't have to be taught that murder is bad. It's not like the legislation, Allah has to tell us that murder is haram. right? That's something that everyone knows. Murder is something that's wrong. So he's like, how could he have done something like this? Even if you have a different type of shit or anything, how could he have done something like this? This is something that everyone knows that is wrong. How can he have done something like this? And now he replies, okay? He replies, he says, قال ألم أقل لك إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. Okay? Do you guys see the difference between his first response and the second response? Okay? After he committed, after the first tearing the rib, right, in the boat, what was the response of Khidr? قال ألم أقل إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. What's the response? The second response of Khidr? قال ألم أقل لك إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. There's an added word, right? لك, added emphasis. This is even showing us that Khidr alayhi salam, he's even getting a little bit very irritated, right? He's like, didn't I just tell you that you won't have sabr? I just told you, right? So he's kind of even getting a little bit heated. So you even see the added emphasis over there. قال ألم أقل لك إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. A growing anger of Khidr alayhi salam. So now Musa alayhi salam, he replies, قال إن سألتك عن شيء بعدها فلا تصاحبني. Right? SubhanAllah. He doesn't say, oh, I forgot. Because clearly he didn't forget. He knew very well that he wasn't supposed to ask a question. But again, you know the personality of Musa alayhi salam. He can't see something wrong. And SubhanAllah, could there be any bigger murder than killing, SubhanAllah, an innocent child, right? And a lot of the scholars, they talk about, okay, if it was a grown man, perhaps he was carrying out, one of the had against this person if he was a murderer or if he had done some type of sin or something like this. But it was an innocent child, SubhanAllah. How can you kill him? There was no excuse for that, right? So Musa alayhi salam, he replies, إِن سَأَلْتُكَ عَنْ شَيْءٍ بَعْدَهَا. If I ask, he puts a condition on himself, SubhanAllah. First, the condition was put upon him that you don't ask. Now he puts he's kind of afraid now, right? He's kind of humble. He's kind of embarrassed. He's like, you know what? If I ask you anything after this, إِن سَأَلْتُكَ عَنْ شَيْءٍ بَعْدَهَا فَلَا تُصَاحِبْنِي. Then, you have the right not to accompany me. Then you have the right not to let me shadow you or follow you or tag along. Then you have that right, SubhanAllah. قَدْ بَلَغْتَ مِنْ لَدُنِّي عُذْرًا. And at that point, you'll have an excuse to leave me, right? If I mess up one more time, then you'll have the excuse to leave me. And the Prophet ﷺ, in the story, at this point, he commented, and he said that only if Musa ﷺ wasn't or didn't put this condition upon himself, he would have learned many wonders of Allah, right? Because he put this condition upon himself, he had to end. But if he didn't put this condition upon himself, he would have learned some very amazing wisdoms behind the things that take place. SubhanAllah. So, فَانْطَلَقَ, they go on. The story goes on. حتى إذا أتيا أهل قرية استطعما أهلها فأبوا أن يضيفوهما فوجدا فيها جدارا يريد أن ينقض فأقام قال لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا. So they go on حتى until إذا أتيا until they reached أهل قرية استطعما. Until they reached the citizens of a town, right? The people of a town, the citizens of a town. And the rule of that time, right? The customs of that time was that if there's any traveler, okay, and he comes to your town, right? The least that you would do was give him some bread, give him some water. It was the custom of that town. It was something ma'roof. It was something that was known, right? The opposite of nakira. Something that was known. Everyone knew that. If there's travelers coming, you give them something to drink, you give them, some basic bread, right? Some pita bread, and then they go on. Okay, that was the customs of that time. But so they come to this, Musa alayhi salam and Khidr, they reach this town, the citizens of this people, Ahla Qarya, istat'ama, right? You guys know what ta'am means? What does ta'am mean? Food, ta'ama, food, right? But istat'ama, when it's put into the istif'al family or the istighfar family, you guys, right? What is one of the benefits from that family, if you guys remember? Huh? What does istaghfar mean? To seek, right? When you seek something, right? To seek for forgiveness, right? Ghafara means he forgave. Istaghfara, he sought for forgiveness, right? So istat'ama, right? Both of them sought for some food. Okay, so they come to this place, right? They see some people, they're like, we're travelers, can we get some food, can we get some water? And who did they ask? Ahlaha. The people, and what is this ha referring back to? Huh? Qaryatin. Yeah, qarya. It's going back to the qarya, that's why it's feminine. Okay? Good. So they ask these citizens, can we get some food? We're traveling, we need some water. We just need some, let us eat, and then we carry on. We get to the next town, then we get some more. That was the custom of that time. Because they couldn't carry much food with them. So, what was the response of these people? Fa'abaw. Fa'abaw. Right? This is the home version. This is the home version, but it's what? An irregularity. So it's fa'abaw. Not abu, but it's abaw. So they, what? What happened? What did they do? They refused. فَأَبَوْا أَن يُضَيِّفُوهُمَا. They refused to be hospitable to these two people. أَن يُضَيِّفُوهُمَا. ضَيِّفُوهُمَا comes from duyuf, guests. They weren't being their host, okay? They weren't hospitable to them. فَأَبَوْا أَن يُضَيِّفُوهُمَا فَوَجَدَا فِيهَا. Okay? So they refuse, so they're like, Musa alayhi salam and Khidr, they're like, alright, let's just get out of here. These people are weird. Everyone gives water and these people are up to no good, let's get out of here. So they start walking out of the town, right? فَوَجَدَا فِيهَا جِدَارًا. And every city, right, it has a wall that protects the city. So they're walking out, فَوَجَدَا فِيهَا جِدَارًا. And while they're exiting, they find this wall. Right? يُرِيدُ أَن يَنْقَضَّ. So this wall, it's about to crumble and fall apart. Right? أَن يَنْقَضَّ. It's يَنْقَضَّ, it means to break within itself. To break, it's not like someone is breaking it, but break from within itself. Right? Because of, it's from what family? Do you guys know what family it's from? What family is Yanqadda from? Bird family. What are the families? Do you guys remember? Huh? Inqalaba. It's from the Inqalaba family. And what was one of the... Yeah, that's the irregularity here, but what was one of the... it was what? It was, one thing that's affecting itself. Okay, so it's affecting itself. It's not like someone broke it, but Yanqadda, it was breaking itself. فَأَقَامَ. So what did Khidr do? He fixed it up. He built that wall. Okay. Now Musa alayhi salam, he's looking at this like, yo, that's messed up, right? These people, right? These fishermen, subhanallah, they're helping us. They're giving us a free ride, right? And you go and you hack a hole in that ship, okay? And then we come back to the shore. An innocent, beautiful, intelligent child playing on the shore. You go and you slaughter him. And then we come to a people, right? We come to a citizen of this town, and they're supposed to give us some food and drink, right? And they refuse, and you help them. What? Musa alayhi salam is like, no. I know I said, فَلَا تُصَاحِبْنِي, right? I know I said that if إِن سَأَلْتُكَ عَنْ شَيْءٍ بَعْدَهَا فَلَا تُصَاحِبْنِي. If I ask you again, you have the right not to allow me to tag along with you. I know I said that, but this is something that's messed up. You can't do that, right? So what does he reply with? فَأَقَامَ. قَالَ لَوْ شِئْتَ لَاتَّخَذْتَ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. And this tells you he was very irritated. And he didn't ask him a question. SubhanAllah, he didn't really ask him a question, right? But what did he say? He said, you know what? If you wanted, you could have got some payment out of that, compensation out of that. They weren't giving us food anyways, but if you build that wall, maybe they could have gave us some food and drink. And it tells you like, when you travel a lot, you kind of lose your cool, right? He was hungry, he was thirsty, it's been a long day, right? Some really, wondrous things already took place, right? He's like, if you wanted to, you could have just asked them for some food and drink in return for what you did, right? So all he said was that. قَالَ لَوْ شِئْتَ لَاتَّخَذْتَ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. It tells you that he was very irritated about that. So he replies, Khidr alayhi salam, right away, قَالَ هَذَا فِرَاقُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. He's like, this is it, right? This is the party between me and you, right? سَأُنَبِّئُكَ بِتَأْوِيلِ مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. I will inform you of the interpretation, بِتَأْوِيلِ مَا أَوْ مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا, of that which you couldn't have sabr over, of that which you couldn't have patience over, right? And he was a little bit irritated, and Khidr alayhi salam said, hey, you're the one who couldn't have any sabr. It's your fault, right? And the use of the word me, هذا فراقي, right? He says, هذا فراق بيني وبينك, right? The use of the word me, it first implies that Khidr alayhi salam is leaving Musa alayhi salam, right? And it also implies that, Musa alayhi salam, if you want to stay here, you can stay. But I'm parting away. If you want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay. And it's a nice way to say it. So now he says, I'm going to give you the interpretations, right? I'm going to tell you of what you wanted to know this whole time, of what you couldn't have sabr of, right? And what were these three incidents that took place? What was the first one? The boat, the ship. Second one? The child. And the third one? Huh? The wall. Okay. Now before we go on to ayah 79 and learn from these gems, because in the response of Khidr alayhi salam, there is infinite wisdom for us of how Allah Azza wa Jal has complete control over us, and how Allah Azza wa Jal has He knows, right? He's the most knowledgeable. إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. But before we get there, one beautiful tidbit I want to share with you, right? And I'm not going to share the reflection, but I just want you to be aware. Over here, what was the last phrase that we just read in ayah 78? What was the last phrase? Huh? مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. Just remember that, okay? And then when we go on the end of this passage, we'll see a different type, similar phrase, but different wording. Okay, and we'll look at that. So, Khidr alayhi salam, he replies. He says, Amma safinatu. He says, as for the ship, okay, فَكَانَتْ لِمَسَاكِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ فِي الْبَحْرِ. It belonged to the poor people that were working, يَعْمَلُونَ فِي الْبَحْرِ, that were working in the ocean. Okay? فَأَرَدْتُ. And I intended, and I wanted, an a'ibaha, that I cause a flaw in it, right? It's from aib. Aib is a flaw, right? So I wanted to cause a flaw in it. An a'ibaha. What is that ha going back to? To the ship. The ship is feminine, so the ha is feminine, okay? An a'ibaha. وَكَانَ وَرَاءَهُمْ مَلِكٌ. And behind them was a king, malikun, okay? وَكَانَ وَرَاءَهُمْ مَلِكٌ يَأْخُذُ كُلَّ سَفِينَةٍ غَصْبًا. And this king, right, that was on the other side, right, on the other side, the destination that they wanted to get to, there was a king that was confiscating ships for his army, for his navy. He wanted to confiscate every ship that he saw, okay? وَأَمَّا الْغُلَامُ. Okay, before we go on, let's talk about this. Okay, let's talk about this. Subhanallah, this Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us the wisdom behind Khidr alayhi salam hacking a hole in the ship. What was the wisdom behind it? The wisdom behind it was that if he didn't hack a hole in the ship, right, they would have gotten to their destination. And what would have happened at this destination? Huh? The king, right, the oppressive king, he would have saw a ship. It's a beautiful ship. There's no flaw in it. It's nice. You know what? It's mine. He would have confiscated it. Right? And subhanallah, what happened? What happened? What did Khidr alayhi salam do? He had a very small flaw. He doesn't say I have a huge hole. Right? Khara'a, it means a little tear. That's what it means. A little tear. Subhanallah. And he had a little tear in it. And because of this, what happened? Perhaps they went back, or perhaps they even got to their destination. And they went to their destination, and the army came, and they looked at the ship, and they said, "Oh, this ship, it's messed up. We don't want it. You can have it." So beautiful. Allah Azza wa Jal caused this temporary, difficulty for these people, a temporary difficulty. And through this temporary difficulty, what happened? Allah Azza wa Jal saved their ship. And the scholars say it's so beautiful that Allah Azza wa Jal saved the very thing that they were charitable by. What were they charitable by? By their ship. And because of that, Allah Azza wa Jal saved their ship. And the scholars, they say that, you have a lot of money, right? And you want that money to be saved, right? Allah will bless your money if you spend that money. You have a lot of time. You want that time to have barakah and be productive. Use that time for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, and that time will be blessed for you and will be productive. You have a lot of expertise, right? Use it for the sake of Allah, and you use those expertise, and those expertise of yours will be blessed. And Allah will bless it, and you'll come closer to Allah Azza wa Jal because of that. And we see the wisdom behind it, subhanAllah, right? Those people of that ship, what do you think they were going through? They were like, man, we helped you. How could we have done this to us? They perhaps, we are very narrow-minded. We only see like one step in front of us. While Allah Azza wa Jal, He knows the infinite future. Right? We're very narrow-minded. We don't see the future. We don't know the future. Right? They probably were like, oh man, we shouldn't have helped this guy. We helped him and he did this such and such. We shouldn't be helping people. No. You help people. And because of that, there is some blessing. There's a blessing, but that blessing is disguised. You don't see it. You don't see it right now. And perhaps they didn't see it later on. But verily Allah Azza wa Jal, for sure He helped them through this. Right? The very means that they were charitable by, Allah helped them through that means. Through that ship of theirs. And he goes on. And he says, as for the ship, وَأَمَّا الْغُلَامُ, and as for the boy, فَكَانَ أَبَوَاهُ, right? He had parents, مُؤْمِنَيْنِ, that were true believers, not Muslimain, mu'minain, true believers, right? فَخَشِينَ أَن يُرْهِقَهُمَا طُغْيَانًا وَكُفْرًا, right? And we were afraid that he would force them, this child, he would grow up and he would be rebellious. He would be a disbeliever. And not only will he be a disbeliever, but he would be so rebellious that he would even turn and the love that the parents would have for this child, that love would turn their parents into disbelievers as well. So we were scared for that. SubhanAllah. Because of that, فَأَرَدْنَا, we wished, or we intended. And who is this we going back to? Khidr and Allah Azza wa Jal, right? In the first, and we'll go back to this, right? In the first story, in the story of the ship, he said, فَأَرَدْتُ, I intended, right? Over here he says, we intended. He says, we intended, right? Khidr himself and who? Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay? And the scholars say, why he said فَأَرَدْتُ? Why he said, in the first place where he said, I intended, is because, what was the intent? What did he do? He poked a hole in that ship, right? And that's something that's not good, right? So he's attributing the evil to himself. He's not attributing to Allah Azza wa Jalla, right? And also they say, another way of looking at it is because he knew himself that there was a king that was rebellious and he was confiscating the ships. So he already knew of that, so he did that. And because he didn't want their ship to be confiscated. But as for the second group, or as for the second incident, this boy, he said that this boy had parents that were righteous, right? And the boy would grow up to be rebellious, right? So he said that we intended, we meaning Allah and Khidr, that Allah Azza wa Jal what? فَأَرَادَنَا أَن يُبْدِلَهُمَا رَبُّهُمَا, that they intended that Allah, their master, He replaces خَيْرًا مِنْهُمْ, replaces this child with someone better. What? وَأَقْرَبَ رُحْمًا, زَكَاةً وَأَقْرَبَ رُحْمًا, someone that is pure and someone that is closer in relations and closer in mercy. Okay? Now, why does he say فَأَرَدْنَا here, and why did he say فَأَرَدْتُ before? We already said, he said فَأَرَدْتُ before because he already knew that there was a king that was confiscating these ships. He said فَأَرَدْنَا over here because he knew that the parents were righteous, but he didn't know that the boy would grow up to be rebellious. He didn't know that, right? So the part that he knew was the parents were righteous, but he didn't know that the boy would grow up to be rebellious. Therefore, he says فَأَرَدْنَا. I had some knowledge, but Allah completed that knowledge, right? So he uses فَأَرَدْنَا over here. It's beautiful. And one beautiful thing, something we need to understand. When we hear of such cases, right? A child was playing on the shore and, a free accident. A person comes and slaughters this kid, right? And the parents go like, how can this happen? Why to me? And, we start saying these kind of things, which is against what we are taught by our Prophet ﷺ. And these types of scenarios and situations, we need to submit to Allah. Allah knows what the wisdom behind this is. And we know that Allah Azza wa, there's even wisdom behind this. Because these two parents were righteous, Allah Azza wa Jal treated them, because of their righteousness, right, with a child that is better. Allah replaced him, and يُبَدِّلَهُمَا خَيْرًا مِنْ Zakatan wa aqrab, someone better. So when Allah Azza wa Jal takes something away from you, and you think that, oh my God, what happened? Why? And you ask these types of questions, you need to understand that Allah has infinite mercy and He has infinite wisdom over the things that He does. And perhaps even taking of a child could be a blessing in disguise. And Allah tells us that it was a blessing in disguise because, for parents, the worst thing that can happen to them is what? Their child either gets sick or the child is taken away. That's the worst thing that can happen. A parent will be willing to give up their own life for the sake of their child. Any parent, they will be, right? So this is the worst thing that can happen to a child. But even this, subhanAllah, is a blessing in disguise for them. Why? Because Allah says that perhaps it's easier to have sweet memories of a child that already passed, right? Than to have a child to give you rebellion and kufr the entire life. You imagine parents that are mu'minain, right? That are true believers, that are close to Allah Azza wa Jal, and they see their child grow up in kufr, in rebellion, right? Subhanallah, that might be worse, and that definitely is worse than sweet memories of a child that was a beautiful child and left this world, and Allah replaced them with a more beautiful child, zakatan, that is pure, wa aqraba rahma, and is closer to rahma. He doesn't say rahma. Allah says rahma. Rahma, it means two things, right? It means rahm, right? It means rahma. It means mercy. He's closer to mercy, and He's also closer in relations. It's beautiful how this is placed here. The Quran is miracle, right? Just rahm and rahm, beautiful. If you say rahm, it's only mercy. But if you say rahma, it's mercy and it's relation. Rahim, silatul rahim, right? The relations of bond, the family relations, the ties and kinship, that's what it's referring to here. And what does that mean? What that means is that the first child, he wouldn't be close to them. Why? Because although they were Muslims, and this is their child by birth and by blood, but because he's a disbeliever, he has no connection with them. SubhanAllah. But Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَأَقْرَبَ الرَّحْمَةِ The second time around, when they have the child, this child is closer to them. Why? Because he himself is mu'minan as well. He himself is a true believer as well. And subhanAllah, a blessing in disguise, even for such a drastic and something that we can't imagine. Like a child being killed, even that there's blessing in disguise. Even in that there's wisdom, there's good. And that's the beautiful hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, عَجَبَ لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ كُلَّهُ كَانَ خَيْرٍ. Subhanallah. That it's strange, it's amazing. It's amazing the circumstance of the believer, right? Everything for him is good, right? If something good happens to him, he is thankful to Allah. He shows gratitude, and because of him being thankful, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If he is thankful to Allah, Allah increases him in that good. And if something, right, befalls him that is not of his like, right, what happens to him? When a musibah befalls him, a trial or tribulation befalls him, what happens? Sabr, right? He is patient. And because of his patience, Allah Azza wa Jalla increases him in good. Allah increases him in good. So because of this, we see something so tragic happen, right? Something that you and me, if something happened to this, it's in our community, we don't know what to think. But even in that, if we believe in Allah, right? If we really believe in Allah, even those tragic events lead us closer to Allah. Because there is some infinite wisdom in that we don't understand. But there will come a day in the hereafter where we will understand that and say, oh, I'm glad I had sabr. I'm glad I went through and I pulled through that situation and that circumstance that I was in. And one more point. You know, a lot of times, you know, parents are very worried about their children, right? They're very worried about them. Oh, he just opened a Facebook account or a Twitter account. What's going to happen now? And stuff like that. You're very worried about them. And then they come to the imam and they say, you know, my child, you know, he's a teenager now, and you know, he's doing all these crazy things. And can you just, you know, put your hand on his head and read some dua, and miraculously he'll be fine. You know, we think about, you know, it's very sad, but it's true. You guys might be laughing, but it's really true. Like, parents, the upbringing of the child, right? They're busy in their material. They only care about the materialistic aspects of the child, and they want to give him the best food and the best home and the best car and the best school and the best, you know, materialistic things, right? But they don't care about the spiritual factor, right? And the child grows up, right? And he has no spirituality, and he grows up into this type of environment, and he doesn't think Islam is very cool, right? And then the parents are all, oh my God, what's going to happen now, right? And Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us, right? If you care about your children, and you want your children to live a life of spirituality and live a life of being religious and being ones who remember Allah, what's the number one factor of having righteous children? What is that number one factor? Huh? In this story, the number one factor is what? Huh? It's in the ayah. كَانَ أَبَوَاهُ مُؤْمِنَيْنِ. The parents themselves were true believers. The parents themselves were true believers, and because of that, you know, the parents themselves are true believers. And perhaps they're raising a child, right? But Allah is taking away that child to give them a better child, right? And one more beautiful benefit we see from this. Whenever Allah Azza wa Jalla, He takes something away from you, He doesn't just replace it. What does He do? خَيْرًا مِنْهُ. Something better than it. And if you truly believe in Allah, there's complete peace. If something goes, okay. If something goes, it's alright. I'm going to get something better than it, right? The first incident was, right, a loss of materialistic wealth. That's what it was, right? Right? Their business, basically the ship is their business, right? So it was, yeah, they lost a couple of $1,000s in the stock market. That's what happened, right? It was loss of material wealth. What's the second type of incident, right? It's a loss of what? Of life. The loss of a family member, right? In any of these situations, right? If you really believe in Allah, right? And you have this tawakkul in Allah, right? Because of that, what happens? Allah replaces it with something better, right? How did Allah replace the ship with something better? If that hadn't happened, they wouldn't have that ship, right? And it's so beautiful that Allah says, خَرَقَهِ, He did a little tear in that, right? And أَعِيبَهَا, a little flaw in that. That's all that happened. They just needed a couple of hours for the army to come and say that, oh, this ship is messed up. And they left off, and then they just repaired it right there, and subhanAllah, they have their ship, right? And what happened with the child, right? The child, Allah replaced it, خَيْرًا مِنْهُ زَكَاةً وَأَقْرَبَ الرَّحْمَةِ. Something better than it. So if you want to have righteous children, be righteous yourself. That's what it is. It's easy as that. You want to have righteous children, be righteous yourself, and Allah will make it a fact that your children are righteous. Allah makes it a fact. He takes away a child and replaces it with a child that will be righteous because their parents were righteous. SubhanAllah. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ, he said it beautifully, the mu'min, the believer is never a loser. In every circumstance, he's a winner. It's a win-win situation. Something good happens, he's thankful for it, he increases it in goodness. Something supposedly bad happens, right? Something that we think, right? عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. Sometimes we might think something is bad for us, but in reality, we don't know the reality of things. But in reality, it is really better for us, right? And we're just, subhanAllah, we think back and we're like, let's just be patient. And each and every one of us, I bet you, each and every one of us, if you think about your past and your experiences, and there definitely, I know, that circumstances have happened where you think something went against what you were planning for. Right? And at that very instant, you didn't understand what's happening. Why, Ya Allah, why is this happening? Why isn't this going? Why am I not getting this job? Why am I not getting this promotion? Why am I not getting into that med school? Why isn't this business happening? The closing on that home happening? Why? We're making dua, and it's not happening, right? Why isn't it happening, right? And then we look back and we're like, subhanAllah, if that happened, I wouldn't have been where I am today, right? Allah put a block over there, right? So that this could happen, so that this could happen, so that I could be here, and subhanallah, right? Just look back. Just look, you don't need to, these stories are something of reminder, of course, but your life itself, your life experiences, you look back, subhanallah, things fall in place. The wisdom of Allah, something happens, something doesn't happen, right? And you want it to happen, but Allah delays it, right? Subhanallah, Allah delays it. And because of that, you see that Allah delayed it for a time because there was a better time where it would be more perfect. Then Allah gives it to you at that time. Subhanallah. Just have this. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. Just have tawakkul in Allah, and you read the stories of the Sahaba, right? And the four imams, right? What did they say? They used to say that if you have iman in Islam, then you have all the riches of this life. You don't need anything, right? You don't need anything because you're content. And that contentment only comes from belief in Allah and relying completely on Allah. And when you have the reliance on Allah, then even the most tragic events of your child being taken away, it's a blessing in disguise. Only if you were to have that tawakkul in Allah Azza wa Jalla. فَأَرَدْنَا أَن يُبْدِلَهُمَا رَبُّهُمَا خَيْرًا مِنْهُ زَكَاةً وَأَقْرَبَ رَحْمًا. And then he goes on to the third incident. And he says, وَأَمَّا الْجِدَارِ. And he says, and as for the wall, فَكَانَ لِغُلَامَيْنِ يَتِيمَيْنِ. It was for two boys. It belonged to two young boys. لِغُلَامَيْنِ يَتِيمَيْنِ. What kind of boys? Two orphan boys. Okay? Fil Madina, in that very city. In that city that they said, hey, get out of here, you can't have no water. You can't drink from our well. These people, he said, those two boys, they were the wall that he rebuilt that belonged to those two boys, two orphan boys in that city. وَكَانَ تَحْتَهُ كَنْزٌ لَهُمَا. And underneath that wall, there was a treasure that belonged lahuma to those two orphan boys. Subhanallah. Right? So, the father was either killed or he passed away. Right? And the father, he buried some treasure for, subhanallah, for his kids, for his wife. Right? And we talked about financially responsible people last week, right? You guys remember? One of the special slaves of Allah are those who are financially responsible. And we see that in here. This father of theirs was very financially responsible. He just didn't think about what's in front of him. He thought about the real things. What if I leave this world? Am I leaving my children and my family in a good place where they can support themselves? Right? Subhanallah. وَكَانَ تَحْتَهُ كَنْزٌ لَهُمَا. Right? And this is the secret of this incident. وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. And their father used to be a righteous man. Subhanallah. Their father used to be a righteous man. He passed away, but under this wall for these two boys, orphan boys, he left a treasure. وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا فَأَرَادَ رَبُّكَ. And your master willed, your master intended. Right? The first one was فَأَرَدْتُ, I intended. Second incident was فَأَرَدْنَا. Your master and Khidr alayhi both intended. Over here, what does he say? Your master intended. All of the credit goes to Allah over here, right? فَأَرَادَ رَبُّكَ. Your master intended أَن يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُمَا. That these two boys, right now they're young, right? That Allah Azza wa Jalla, He intended that these two boys reach an age where they are strong. أَن يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُمَا وَيَسْتَخْرِجَ كَنْزَهُمَا. And they're strong, and then they discover this treasure of theirs. رَحْمَةً مِّن رَبِّكَ. As a mercy from their master. وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. And whatever I've done so far, it hasn't been from my own accord. I haven't done this myself. This is something that I have been revealed and I have been given from Allah Azza wa Jal. Given knowledge from Allah Azza wa Jal. ذَلِكَ تَأْوِيلُ مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. And that is something that you didn't have sabr over. Now let's go into this last incident, okay? And we'll wrap it up over here. It's beautiful. So he says that, you guys remember what he did, right? So they go to this town, right? And they ask for food, for some water. They said no. He's walking out and he sees a wall that's falling and he rebuilds it, right? So what happens over here, subhanAllah, Allah Azza wa Jalla, from His infinite mercy, He says that if that wall were to break, what would have happened? If that wall at that instant would have to break, what would have happened? The treasure would have been exposed. And if that treasure, guns, would have been exposed, what do you think would happen? From a townspeople that were so arrogant and that was so bad that they weren't willing to give someone water. What do you think those people would have done with that guns? You think they would have left it for two orphans? For a wife that's widowed, that's weak? You think they would have left that treasure for them? No. So Allah Azza wa Jal فَأَرَادَ رَبُّكَ أَنْ يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُمَا وَيَسْتَخْرِجَ كَنْزَهُمَا. So your master, He willed that they, subhanallah, become strong men. And they extract it and it becomes exposed to them when they can take care of it. When they're able to own it, take ownership of it, because they can't take ownership of it when they're really small and their wife and their mother is a widow. They can't, right? And subhanallah, you have to understand what this widow is going through. Okay, she knows that there is some treasure that my husband had buried somewhere. There's some treasure, and maybe she's making dua to Allah. Ya Allah, where is this treasure? Maybe she's going through hard times. You know, a widow, it's very hard, especially in that type of town where people are so ruthless. It's very hard. She's making dua and dua and dua, and she's keep on making this dua. But subhanallah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He delays the dua. Subhanallah, you and me, we constantly make dua. Ya Allah, let me get this job, let me get this house, let me get this car, let me get married to this person, let me do this, let me do that. We're constantly making dua, right? But Allah Azza wa Jalla, sometimes He delays it, right? He delays it. Why does He delay it? Because there's a better time. And if He had gotten it that very moment, perhaps it would have been snatched away from that widow, right? But Allah delayed it because there was a better time. And when that better time came, subhanallah, perhaps they needed it more. These when you're young, you're young. But when you're older, you need more. Well, you need to take care of yourself. You need to support yourself. They needed it at that time, subhanallah. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He delayed that response of the dua so that it would come at a time where they needed it more. Right? This shows us the wisdom of Allah Azza wa Jal. And over here it says فَأَرَادَ رَبُّكَ. Right? Because over here, he had no knowledge of this. He had no knowledge that these children needed, or he had no knowledge of these circumstances. And because of that, he attributes all, subhanallah, of the credit to Allah Azza wa Jal. Whereas in the first case, he knew that the king was rebellious and he was confiscating. And the second case, he knew a little bit that the parents were righteous. But over here, he had no knowledge. So he says, فَأَرَادَ رَبُّكَ أَنْ يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُمَا وَيَسْتَخْرِجَ كَنْزَهُمَا رَحْمَةً مِّن رَبِّكَ وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. And then he makes it very, very clear. Very, very clear. وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. This is not anything of my own accord. This is not something that I'm coming up with. This is all of the knowledge وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا, of the knowledge that Allah Azza wa Jalla had given me. The special knowledge that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given me. I take no credit. Everything is from Allah Azza wa Jalla. Subhanallah. This shows you even the characteristics of a good teacher. That he doesn't take any knowledge. Right? A good teacher, he always relates back to Allah and Rasulullah. قال Allah, قال Rasulullah. That's it. It all goes back to him. He's only a piece in the middle that's relating you to that knowledge. That's all he's doing. فَأَرَادَ رَبُّكَ أَنْ يَبْلُغَ أَشُدَّهُمَا وَيَسْتَخْرِجَ كَنْزَهُمَا رَحْمَةً مِّن رَبِّكَ وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي ذَلِكَ تَأْوِيلُ. And that is the interpretation of مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ, of what you couldn't have sabr, عَلَيْهِ sabr, of you weren't able to have sabr. Okay? مَا لَمْ تَسْتِعْ, sorry. مَا لَمْ تَسْتِعْ عَلَيْهِ sabr. And what did I say to keep in mind? What was the similar phrase, but it was a little bit different? The first one was tastati', right? And this is tastir'. Okay. Now a little bit of balagha. Okay. Okay. A little bit of rhetoric of Arabic knowledge, Arabic language, which is beautiful, right? In Arabic, sometimes you can omit a word. If they're in certain verb patterns, you can omit a letter, only if it is close enough. You know ta and ta are close, right? Dad and la are close. You know, words like these, sometimes they can be omitted. In specific circumstances when they're in specific verb patterns. Not always. So don't go on and start reading Quran and start omitting letters. Oh, because that brother said, don't do that. It's specific, okay? And obviously we can do it when we're reciting. This is something that's divine and it's beautiful. We're precise letter selection in the Quran. It's beautiful. So, subhanAllah, in the beginning of the passage where he said, I will give you interpretations of what you weren't able to have sabr, there was still some time because he still gave him that interpretation, right? So there was still some time. When it came to the end, at this time, he's like as though he doesn't even pronounce that extra letter. He says, that's it, time's over. That was our companionship. He walks out, right? The time is over. لَمْ تَسْتِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. That's it. That's the time that we're going to have. And after this, هَذَا فِرَاقُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. That's it. SubhanAllah. So at the first time that is pronounced over there, as some of the grammarians, they say, it's because there was still some time, because he still had to give them the interpretation. But after the interpretation was done, as though that letter is not even there. Khalas, then, subhanAllah. Okay, so that is our passage for today. I have a couple of minutes left, and I'm just going to share with you guys a couple of things, okay? Or do you guys want to see the PowerPoint? Or do you want me to email that out to you guys?
No, that's see.
Huh? Actually,
See.
I'll show it to you. It'll be good. Can you open this? Might just be clearer.
Turn the lights on. Might as well email it.
You just have to press it.
Okay. I couldn't see you say it.
Okay. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Alright, so a lot of this is just a summary of what we covered. This was a good presentation put together by productivemuslim.com. It's a great website. If you guys aren't already aware of it, it's something that you can take benefit, especially in the month of Ramadan. They do a lot of cool things, so productivemuslim.com. Alright, so secrets of Surah Al-Kahf. Am I in your way? Okay. So, ever wondered, right, the Prophet ﷺ asked us to recite Surah Al-Kahf every Friday. Let's find out. And these are the hadith that I had already mentioned. The one who learns by heart the first 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf will be protected from the Dajjal. And the Prophet ﷺ also said that whoever recites Surah Al-Kahf on Yawm al-Jum'ah, a light will shine from him between the 2 Fridays. So the 4 stories, people of the Kahf, the owner of the 2 gardens, Musa and Khidr, and Dhul Qarnayn. Okay, these are the four stories, and we know the summaries of each of those we've covered, right? And we also know that the people of the cave was a trial of faith and religion. The 2 gardens was a trial of wealth, the fitna of wealth. The fitna of ilm was the 3rd one, and the fitna of power was the last one. Okay? And in the middle of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions Iblis as the one who steers these trials. Okay? And it's the story of Iblis, if you guys recall. And you know, and another reason why I didn't want to just isolate today on just Musa and Khidr was because Surah Al-Kahf is something that's so close to us. We recite it every Friday. If we don't, we should be. Like, if not even alone as a family, we should be. And when we do that, you know, just to have these themes in mind, right? And when we're reading it, we can create this type of khushur, inshallah. Okay, what's the relationship between Surah Al-Kahf and the Dajjal? This is something that I didn't have time to get into, but this is something we can quickly go over. Okay, so the trial of faith, okay? And what will the Dajjal do? He'll ask people to worship him and not Allah, right? The trial of wealth, he'll be given powers to start and stop rain and tempt people with his wealth, right? He'll be owning the east and the west. The trial of knowledge, he'll trial people with the knowledge and news he gives them, right? He'll give them some unforeseen news to have the people believe in him. And trial of power, he'll control huge parts of the world. Okay, how to survive these trials? These are the different ways, okay? And these are going back to specific ayat in Surah Al-Kahf, okay? These are going back to specific ayat. Obviously, we can go through all of these ayat, but what I will strongly recommend you guys to do is, there's a sign-up sheet going around. Has everyone signed up? If you guys want this slides, I can send it to you guys. Just make sure that you guys signed up, because we won't be able to go through all of these. Okay. Actually, if you signed up last week, you don't need to sign up, because I already have your emails. Only because I know a lot of the brothers didn't sign up last week because they didn't have a pen, because they don't take notes. But the sister, I should just give it to the brothers. Okay. Okay, so the survival kit, number 1, is good companionship, right? And it goes back to a verse in Surah Al-Kahf. These are the ways that you can be saved from the Dajjal. And it's because of these ayat that are specified in Surah Al-Kahf. And each of these, right? Knowing the truth of this world, right? Allah Azza wa Jalla, He gives us the ayat on that. Humbleness. Right? What was the ayat? We went through ayat 69. مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِيعَ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. Right? Sincerity. Okay? Calling to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Remembering the hereafter. Yeah, that's it. So this is definitely something that's very good, inshallah. Something that each and every one of you guys can go through it, memorize it. Ramadan is a good time to, you know, brush up your memorization skills. At least the first 10 ayat of Surah Al-Kahf. Can someone hit the lights? There you go. So, inshallah, I'll definitely send this out. And if you guys have any questions, again, you have my email, arabic.ifn@gmail.com. The reason I'm taking your email addresses is because we want to gauge how many of you might be interested. If we offered another Arabic course here at IFN, again, we've been having an Arabic course here every Sundays for the last almost what? Year and a half, inshallah. A year and a half. So we completed, it's a year course. We completed the year course, and then we started an advanced course. So So we're still in that, and this is being brought to you by that advanced course, so you guys can thank them. Alhamdulillah. So if we just want to gauge interest of those who will be interested. This Arabic course, it's basically what it is for us to get the fundamentals of the Arabic language so that we can start engaging in our salah, right? So that in Ramadan when we're praying, we're not thinking about the patterns on the carpet or about the iftari or something like that. We're kind of engaged, right? Even to the littlest effect, even if I know what a pronoun is or if an idafa is, you're at least engaged in the text. There's a long journey. I'm not going to say after this year you're going to be able to understand the... I'm still a student of the Quran, right? So it's just a start. Sometimes it's very hard for a student. A lot of you I know want to learn Arabic, but it's very hard. You probably picked up a couple of books and you've tried to go through it and you say this is way too hard for me, right? But the thing about this is we try to express it in an easier fashion. We try to make it easy. We try to take away the Arabic terminology and all of that. And then once you get comfortable with it, the advanced course, I apply that on these students later on. But in the beginning, we try to get away from that, just the basics. So you understand the fundamentals of how the framework of the Arabic language, and then, depending on how enthusiastic you are yourself, you can take that knowledge and further yourself a lot more, right? Than starting from scratch by your own. So that's the intent behind these types of classes. It's once a week on Sundays for 3 hours and it goes for a year. Okay. So if you are interested, there's sign-up sheet. Sign it. Give me your email. Make sure it's legible, brothers. Make sure it's legible so I can read it. And if you're interested, yes. If not, no, it's okay. Whether you're interested or not, inshallah, if your email is there, I'll send this deck out to you guys, and you can, inshallah, benefit from it and pass it on. I think it's very well put together, inshallah. Any questions? All right, Jazakallah khair. Sorry I went a couple minutes over. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
मैंने भी कहा था हमारे घर आई थी ना आज हाँ तो हमने कहा था कि चले आप हमारे साथ चले वो भी सुबह मैंने उनको भेज आया आप भी आए किसी दिन आने की कोशिश करें नहीं मतलब काम
Thank you.